Hey guys, welcome to the Sunday special. I haven't been posting videos on Sunday for a while now, but I wanted to post this one today on Sunday because it's really long and I think it's a really good conversation. This video is with a good personal friend of mine, Jesse Lemieux, who has been a permaculture instructor for quite a long time, but now he's a market gardener. And him and I actually get together every now and then, just kind of shoot the breeze. We talk philosophy and economics and politics, and of course farming and sustainability. And I think in this video we actually talk about all of those things. So buckle yourselves in, and Jesse is a very interesting guy, and we're gonna go down the rabbit hole a little bit on this one. So you can listen to it on a podcast or as a podcast. The video isn't really so important. It's more the conversations we're having. So strap yourselves in and enjoy. So, you know, we met a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And you were doing like it was an intro to permaculture.
That's right.
But you were living on, was it Lasqueti Island or something? Or
no, it was Denman Island.
Denman Island. You were living on Denman Island
then?
Yeah, that's
we
right.
were.
Yeah. And you have been teaching permaculture for a long time. And you started, like, let's go back to when, what was it, Australia? You were down with Jeff Lawton in Australia. Yeah. Let's kind of go.
I'll go back a little bit further than
Perfect,
that, and I'll try and make it as quick as I can.
Okay.
So at I'll start in university because, and this when I was teaching permaculture, because I haven't really done that for a while, and I am thinking of getting back into that world, but that's. But anyway, when I was teaching permaculture, you know, my intro story was always started in university, and I went to the University of Victoria and I got a general degree in biology.
Okay.
And there was this one course that I took in my last year. It's called conservation biology, and all summer long, I was already working in horticulture at the time. I was working at a nursery down on the coast.
Yeah.
That was we do bug grafting, so as a production grafter, grafting apple trees and shade trees for the garden center industry, right? For people, you know, that are you know, putting trees in boulevards and things like that. So I was doing that kind of production in the summer, and I was going to school, and I really fell in love with horticulture, which is, I don't know if that's more of a curse than a blessing, but anyway, that's kind of like, you know, the following on from the stuff we talked about with my aunties, right?
Yeah.
And the grandmothers, right? But I was doing that, and I was looking forward to taking this course in conservation biology, because everything up to that point was just like all these biology courses, how badly we're screwing everything up. It's all this doom and gloom, and
constant doom and
just
gloom,
this constant doom and gloom, right? And I'm getting ready to take this conservation biology course, and I thought this is what I wanted, was that this course in conservation biology was going to be about how do we fix this?
How do we fix stuff? Yeah.
All it was this is how we quantify how bad things are, and oh, by the way, we're not actually that good at it.
Right.
Right? And I remember being like, this is ridiculous.
Bummed out on that?
Like, totally bummed out by that.
Yeah.
So I started skipping and I didn't do that well in it, because I'm just like, it was my last year university. I was just like, I'm not going to waste my time with this. And, you know, we'd have these guest lecturers that would come in, and I remember looking at all these, like, they're all senior level university students, and this guy is presenting his research on climate change. Do we want to go there today?
Oh, we can go wherever. Yeah.
And he's presenting his research, and it's this cutting edge data, and all the data was showing was that in the winter time, in the northern hemisphere, when all the plants shut down, CO2 levels increase in the atmosphere. Of course they do, because the plants
they're not taking
aren't
CO2
using
in. Yeah.
And then in the summertime, when all the plants are growing, CO2 levels decrease.
Right.
But then the thing is that in the wintertime, because nothing has any leaves on it and the ground's covered in snow, there's this albedo effect, right? That's reflecting, like, it was a nothing burger, but he was presenting it like it was a something burger.
Right.
And everybody's just taking notes. And here we are, we're senior level university students. We're supposed to have been trained to, like, go, right? And ask questions. And I dared to ask a question, and everybody just went. And I was just like, okay, you people are done.
Yeah, right.
Right? And we had to write a position paper for that class, and we had to pick a conservation topic. And I came across these papers And the conservation topics were all these doom and gloom, like this is how bad things are getting, blah, blah, blah. And I came across this series of papers that was looking at polycultural, tropical agroecologies.
Sure.
That's not the word they were using. That's not that I didn't have that term.
That's kind of what it is.
But that's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. They were looking at the relationship between how close a farm was to a biodiversity island, and like the hedgerows, and then these islands of larger forest patches, and they found a correlation between productivity on the farm and closer proximity to like big, they called them habitat trees in the corner of the field or things like that, and they saw a positive correlation.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, this is
That's cool.
And so I wrote this paper that I had 3 or 4 of these papers that I was referring to, and I kind of wrote this idea up that was like, maybe we can design a human-centered ecology. Rather than humans being this problem, maybe we can take this position that we can be part of this, and that what we really need to do is think about how do we develop the most diverse human ecology possible. And this is like no word of a lie. These are thoughts that I was having, and I got shot down. And I was just like...
And so is that what now drove you towards permaculture as a solution at that time?
Well, no. So I didn't know about permaculture at the time. So what that drove me towards, it drove me away from continuing a career in academia. So here I was, I had this biology degree, and my only choices for like viable employment, right, were like truly like a good wage viable employment were working for getting a government job, right, and going down that track, or doing a master's. And I was so over it. I was just like, I don't want to waste my time on a master's, because I was just like that last semester I had just kind of was just like, oh, I'm done with this. And I did not want to work for the government. There is no way. You couldn't pay me enough at that time to want to work for the government. So thankfully, like after the 5.5 years, because I went through 2 universities of the indoctrination, it wasn't as bad then as it is, I think, now.
As it is now, But
I mean, it was an indoctrination for sure, in these neo-Marxist, and that just permeated everything. It permeates the sciences. That's the other thing too, is like these biology professors weren't even sticking to their own. They weren't thinking scientifically. They were thinking politically. And they were teaching politically. Because, you know, when you learn about evolution in university, they talk about all the things that drive evolution, and it's all change. It's all like cataclysms, species isolation, species loss, and migration. But then you get into the conservation biology, and it's like, we're going to try and fight all of those things.
No, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting?
It's a total, and it's like, so
it's
I go
to one contradiction in an approach.
So you go to one class where they're talking about how biology works, and then this other class is supposed to be like a science, but it's like, yeah, we're using science, but there's this political ideology that underpins and loads all the science towards one direction. It's absolutely atrocious.
It is. Wow.
Really bad.
We opened a real can of worms.
We did.
I mean, but okay, I want to go to
so how I got to permaculture.
Yeah, let's go into that, because I think that's people are going to find
rather than going on those career tracks, I went back to the tree nursery, and I started working full time. I rolled it from just a summer position into the full-time crew manager for that nursery. And I did that for the next 2.5 years until I learned everything I could there, and I started getting bored. And that's when I started talking with the owner about, well, maybe I could have my own projects, and he was really encouraged. And he was like, still to this day, the best mentor I've ever had. The guy was amazing. His name's Doug Dijon. He runs a nursery down the coast called Misty Meadow.
Where was this one?
Surrey. This is in Surrey.
Okay.
But I was exposed when I was there to a guy who had taken an agroecology degree at the University of BC. So I got exposed to those ideas, and I was like, agroecology, that's what I was thinking about in my last... You know, I didn't know it existed, and I kept working there, and then I was thinking, okay, I got to do something. I'm done. I've kind of tapped out. I can go as far as I can on this farm. I don't know where I'm going to go, you know, much further. So I started looking at going back to school and studying engineering, because I was thinking about design. Like, how do you design like that? Our initial seed idea of like designing a human-based ecology. I knew I was thinking about design. Right. I was listening to some alternative radio stuff that talked about design and things like that. And this was before the podcast phenomenon.
Right.
And so I didn't have, I can't even imagine.
I know, hey?
Right? If I'd had the podcast back then.
How did we get into all this stuff before the podcast? It's insane.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. But
You had to really dig for it.
But one day we were at Tanya, my wife, my partner, we were at Banyan Books in Vancouver, which is like the new age hippie bookstore, right?
Classic.
And I went straight to the homesteading section, and I found this book, Introduction to Permaculture, there by Bill Mollison.
Bill Mollison. Okay.
And Tanya will tell you,
book.
I went and found her because she was in like the crystal section.
Yeah.
Because that's the part that she was interested in at the time.
Yeah.
And I went and found her with this book. I grabbed a whole bunch of books off the shelf and I started flipping through them, reading the first few pages. And I read this introduction, the introducing page, an introduction to permaculture.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was one of those moments, you know, we've all had them where it's just
the
like,
aha
this
moment.
person is articulating all of my frustrations.
I still think the Intro to Permaculture is the best permaculture book.
It's amazing.
It's better than the designer's manual. It's just like
so
a
digestible.
download of the concepts without all the heavy theory
heavy
and stuff that goes into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I found that book, and it was just like, it was like all this stuff that was swirling around my head was like down there on the page, and I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
And I went and found Tanya, and I was just like, this is what I want to do. Like it was like an instantaneous, like Lawton likes to call it a terminal infection, right? You're terminally infected by permaculture.
Right.
And so I took that book home and I digested it, and I was right, because I had already sent in applications to upgrade my math, to go back to school to study engineering. And like I was going to do something. Right.
Right.
And permaculture grabbed me at that moment, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think for worse, but
maybe we'll get into that.
But it grabbed me, and I read through that whole book, and then it was Mollison. He was such a brilliant tactician. Hey, so it was strategy. At the back of that book, he had all this information on how to connect with the global permaculture movement. Taking information about taking a PDC and like all this stuff, and like. Next thing you know, I'm hunting around looking for PDCs. It was the middle of summer, and at that time there's very few PDCs being taught in Canada, and they followed the seasonal cycle. So I'd already kind of missed all the PDCs that had run. Right. And I'm thankful for that, because it drove me to go to Australia, because that I was like right away. I was calling. I wrote an email to Lisa, to Tagari. Bill's Tagari farm. And Lisa Mollison responded back to me, and I was just like, it was basically, I just bared it all. I was like, look, I want to take a permaculture design course. I'm considering going across the world to, like coming to Australia to take this course with Jeff Lawton. He's a teacher you recommend. Do you think that's worth it?
This is before Jeff was really famous.
It was right on the cusp.
Right.
Timing is the right place, right time, right?
Yeah.
And her response back really blew me away, because here I gave this person this opportunity, like, yeah, come on, and do this total sell job. And all she said back to me is, in my opinion, Jeff Lawton's the best permaculture teacher there is. Okay. Make your own decision. Right. Right? Because I told her, I was just like, yeah, I only have so much money. This is going to be an expensive trip. It's like a $6,000 trip, 3-month trip to Australia to take a permaculture design course. Yeah. And I made the decision to go, and I took this first course with Jeff, and he was teaching it. It was being organized by somebody else, and it was a total hippie cock up, the whole course. The food wasn't planned properly. Jeff was 3 days late. He sent some other
3 days late.
Yeah.
How do you show up 3 days late?
He sent some other guy who had never taught a course in his life to fill in for him for 3 days.
What a joke.
And the guy who was running the course wasn't taking, like, I remember he picked me up, this guy picked me up from the airport, the guy who was running the course. And he shows up, and he's got greasy hair that hasn't had a brush through it in weeks, down to the middle of his back. He's barefoot. This is the airport in Adelaide, which is like, it's a nice airport. Yeah. I mean, all that infrastructure in Australia is nice. Yeah. Right?
It's all new.
It's all new. Yeah. And he shows up, he's walking in his bare feet. He's got a shirt that's covered in paint stains, and he's got a pair of sweatpants on that have a rip in the ass.
Oh my god!
And he's not wearing any underwear.
What a joke!
He's not wearing any underwear.
Just a train wreck.
Yeah, and we get in the car, and one of the first things he says to me was, oh man, I just spent my last bit of money on my renovations, and I'm going, oh no, this person's, he's my food supply for the next 2 weeks. I paid this guy to feed me for the next 2 weeks. And that's exactly how it turned out. And then Jeff's not there, and like, it was just, in spite of all of that, Jeff Lawton rolls in and like nails the room in like 25 minutes and totally saves it.
Right, okay.
And the stuff that he was, and I by the time I got in there, I had read the designer's manual cover to cover.
And was this like a classic 2-week long PDC?
It's a 2-week long PDC. Yeah. I had read the designer's manual. I pre-read the designer's. Is the only out of all the university I had done, like 5.5. I never pre-read textbooks. Right. I pre-read that textbook. Right. I knew that textbook inside and out. So I was ready for it. Yeah. And there was there's some stuff that Jeff Lawton knows and understands about permaculture that is like it's pretty cool. Like sometimes maybe the stuff doesn't necessarily stand the test, like when you get down to like a real practical application, but there are parts about it that's just like as a thought idea, it's intriguing. Yeah. And it grabbed me, and then I had my bike, and like I was going to take this 2-week course, and I had 3-month ticket there. And I was just gonna go bike around Australia. I was gonna bike tour. Yeah. And that didn't happen. A family at the course, they were driving around Australia. They invited me to come with them for 4 days. They took me into Melbourne. I stayed with another person that I'd taken the course with, Kirsten, Nick Ritter and Kirsten. Oh yeah. Yeah. I stayed with them in Melbourne.
Okay, they were just
getting ready to make their transition out to Milkwood and get that started. Okay. And so that's how I hung out with them for 2.5 weeks. Okay. Right? And then Jeff was back on his farm, and he had just gotten his farm back because he had just spent like 3 years in the Middle East or something like that. Yeah. And he was just ramping up, and his farm was a disheveled mess. And so then I went from Melbourne, then I went up to Noosa. Did I go to Noosa that time? With this family that it just got invited into this community, and like the bike got left in a box in Adelaide. And I just
toured around.
I just toured around from place to place and hung out with these people, and it was just like this total permaculture immersion.
Yeah, serendipity.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I spent 3.5 weeks on Jeff's farm with 2 other students from that class that I'd taken, and him and Nadia, and that was it. Okay. And Jeff, like, it was so funny because like it was like, well, what are you charging us, Jeff? And like we're all sitting around, and he's going, well, if you're an intern, it's $500 a week, and if you're a woofer, it's $50 a week, because we're not really up and running and we don't have enough food. Right. And everybody's like, and then he would go away, and we'd all talk amongst ourselves and try and, well, I'm not paying $500. What's the difference? Yeah. And I said, well, I'm paying $500. Yeah. Like, I'm paying you and I worked harder than all of them. I was paying more than them, and I was working harder than them. Right. And you know who spent time with me? Yeah. Jeff.
Of course.
Anytime I asked a question, I would get 2.5 hours of his time, one-on-one. The guy gave me everything because I gave him everything I had. Sure. Right? Yeah. And that is like, and that's the way I've done everything in my life. You know, that's a big part of it. That's what my parents taught me, is just working on his day, and people like
show up with value.
Show up with deliver value.
Yeah, deliver value, and you'll get it in return.
And I got it in return. And so I got this, like, I just got the full Jeff Lawton. Yeah. It was like this perfect time that I had, and so anytime I could probably still, we've been out of touch for a while because I've kind of drifted, and things have happened in my life that have, you know, but maybe if he ever watches this, like, I know that I could probably, you know, I could call him up tomorrow and get his ear. Yeah. Yeah. You know. Yeah. So and that's the way it went from that point for the next. Well, so then I went to his farm, and then I went and took a second PDC on the same trip. So now I forked over another. I called Tanya. I was like, well, I need more money. She was at home working, so she sent me another couple $1,000, and I paid tuition to take a second PDC that was being run at Melbourne University, and it was being taught by Jeff and Bill.
Oh, wow, okay.
So now...
I think I've seen some of those recordings of that one on YouTube.
And yeah, it was being recorded. And so then I finished up at Jeff's farm, and then I went somewhere else. And then I went back to Melbourne, and stayed in Melbourne with friends of Nick and Kirsten's, because they had already left up to Milkwood. Yeah. So they put me up, some other people put me up for 2 weeks there. Wow. While I walked back and forth to university. Yeah. And took this course with Jeff and Bill. And then I got to have dinner with Bill at least one night. Yeah. Sitting there with him. Like, and I got this, because I'd given so much to it, I got this like move like right into like the inner circle of all these young people that were starting to just starting their mission in permaculture, right? With Jeff and Bill. And I remember sitting and having dinner with Bill and just like really being frightened to have his attention, because he was such a intense dude. Yeah. And irreverent to the core. Yeah. Right? And not afraid to take down anybody, including himself. Right? And so dinner, and he's talking, and he looks at me, and he's like, "What's your story?" Yeah. Right? And I'm just like, oh shit. I was just like, start telling him, and it was just like, yeah, I've been rolling around with Jeff, and I just like, I gotta think of something, because he loved humor, right? And I was just like, I gotta think of something. I gotta take the piss out of him, right? And it was just like, yeah, I've been here for 3 months now, and when I get home, I'm gonna try to do my very best to forget everything that you and Jeff have taught me. And he looks at me, and he's like, I was just like, got through that one, right? Yeah. Because one morning I went into class there, and he was great. I don't know what it was just like the firing squad with him. He was teaching, and I asked a question. I was trying to be smart, right? Like I was trying to be that smart guy. And I asked this question, and it was some kind of, he was talking about soil degradation, and I was like, oh, seemed like the soil degradation, it was like, maybe it could be like a natural cause thing. And I said, well, can humans exacerbate that? And he kind of just looks at me like, and he kind of gives me this curt answer, like, of course. Yeah. And then he follows it up, it's like, well, I don't think we got much from that. Right? And carries on. But the thing is he nailed the next 5 people that asked him a question that stopped him. He nailed all of them. Right. Just like, don't interrupt me this morning. Right? It was just, and then I went home. Well, and then while I was there, I got introduced to this guy named Kelly Kellogg. And he had this Swedish guy was working for him named Frederick. Yeah. And they offered me a job to design their farm that they were building out in the backcountry. Well, not the backcountry, but out in the hinterlands in Australia. Yeah. Or they're telling me about it, and I'm just like, oh, who are you gonna get to design that? And they look at me, just like, well, we're gonna get you two. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to go home, and I got somebody waiting for me there, and I got a job. Yeah. Right, because at the time I had this job composting biosolids back in Canada, and and we went back to Australia. We took that job there, and then we went to the Middle East to work. We went to Jordan and worked on Jeff's project there, the Greening the Desert project. We were the first students that he sent there. We lived with Nadia's family, Jeff's family, and we spent 3 months there. And then we came back to Australia. We spent about 2 months at Milkwood, helping them get set up and doing a bit of work for them. And then we came home, and we had $1,000, and I taught my first intro to permaculture course with that 1,000 and turned it into a bit more money. Then we moved to Denman Island and started working on an organic apple orchard there. And I taught my first PDC. This is 2 years after I'd taken the course. Taught my first PDC on that orchard in Denman Island. And then over the next couple years, I ended up teaching something like 25 PDCs and a whole bunch of intercourses.
And you traveled to do those PDCs, didn't you?
Yeah, mostly? I did. I went, basically, I've taught everywhere from Vancouver to Winnipeg. Okay. And, in Alberta, and then I've taught one course in Uganda. Yeah. And then I went back to Australia, and I taught a full-length PDC at Jeff's farm. He let me. I was the first student. I didn't co-teach it with him. He went away, and he gave me the reins of the farm. Wow. That was that really threw me for a loop, having to do that. That was pretty high pressure. Yeah. Hey. And I taught the whole course on my own there. I've always been criticized. I know that there's been criticism in the local permaculture community of the way I approach teaching a PDC course.
Right.
I've always taught it on my own.
Right.
It was Jeff's recommendation to do that, to not, and I've always taught it on my own. And there's been a few reasons why I did that. One is because I looked at teaching the PDC as like this. It's kind of like it's a story arc. I mean, it's a story. My approach to teaching it, like, I've got a really strong science background. I understand biology pretty well. The ecological concepts and how that translates to permaculture, I've always thought I've been pretty good at that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I've got a strong horticultural background because I've always worked in horticulture.
Yeah.
And so I use a lot of narrative, and that was because and Bill was always big about how to transmit information and how to make it stick. Right. And narrative is like stories that mean something.
Well, he was big into stories.
He's big into stories.
Yeah.
And both Jeff and Bill is like, well, just pilch our stories until you have your own.
Right.
And so some stories I teach are Jeff ripoffs,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Some are my own.
Mm-hmm.
Some are obviously, I saw that some of the stories that Jeff was telling were Bill ripoffs, right? And you admit to the ones that obviously aren't your own, and then you modify the ones, right, that aren't your own, that you don't have to admit to,
right.
And then you don't make a distinction between the ones that are your own.
Right.
And so I was always cognizant of making sure and I looked at the whole 14 days as one big story arc.
Right.
And I always wanted to make sure that was consistent. And one of the reasons why I ended up moving away from permaculture and not teaching as much anymore and kind of being off is I saw, and I still think it's happening, is there's a fundamentalist neo-Marxist communist idea that has infiltrated it.
It has, yeah.
And
as well as many other things.
As well as many other things.
Academia in particular, yeah.
And I think unfortunately it's infiltrated the majority of the people who are interested in permaculture and who are driving it along. And I was always leery of bringing other people in to teach with me,
mm-hmm.
because I did it once and it was like right away that fundamental ideology changes the way the story arc runs.
Did you?
So that's why I always taught it on my own, and that's how I ran it, and that's the reason why. And I know that I did get criticism because I never shared the space.
You didn't jump on that bandwagon.
That language, sharing. Yeah. You got to share the space. The
right.
space is always about the space. The space, share the space, and
yeah.
Even like with the permaculture ethic, earth care, people care, return of surplus. That's how I phrase it,
mm-hmm.
which is different than even what Bill put in the textbook, because he had earth care, people care, control of growth, which has some really, you follow that logic through to its course. It's got some dark ramifications.
Interesting.
But you see, it's earth care, people care, fair share.
Yeah, this fair share thing is turned into, I mean, I know some people in permaculture, they go, yeah, fair share doesn't mean redistribution of wealth like communism.
How could it not?
I know, but that's what a lot of people assume, and this is one thing that has been my criticism of permaculture, because I criticize it in some ways only because it is, in my opinion, it's turned into sort of a religion in the sense that it's become a game of telephone. Like you know, where you
sure.
have like an idea, and then as it gets passed on, it gets changed and morphed, where it's
right.
become this totally different thing than when I first got into it, and I read the designer manual and the intro books and actually, David Holmgren's book, Pathways and Principles Beyond Sustainability, is a cool book, but it's been adopted by so many people, and it's been penetrated, like you said, to this neo-Marxist stuff, where it's all about like egalitarianism and
it's weird. Well, so the thing is, the reason why I make the distinction between return of surplus and to those two aims, right? You return the surplus to earth care and people care. That's kind of always how I framed it when I was teaching it, and why I didn't like fair share is because I think it's too easy for fair share for somebody to say, well, you have enough, you need to share it.
Yeah, I want some of what you have.
Whereas like return of surplus is like, it kind of puts it back on the individual to say, yes. I have surplus and I'm going to return it.
I'm going to make the choice
to
do this.
It's a more of a libertarian position than this fair share. Everybody gets their fair share,
Yeah.
or otherwise we're not. And that's the kind of the slippery slope of it. And that's why I never ever went down the fair share road. I was just like, no. And like when the first day and a half of my course is getting into the philosophical basis of this fundamental issue. And I'd spend a day, 2 days on it. But the thing is once I got that covered, and like the basic core permaculture ideas, when I get to teaching climate, I'd be like, these are the basic patterns of climate, and this is how they relate back to our core ideas, right, in day 1 and 2. So that's why it could always like refer back. And so the reason, and so then we're getting back to this, like this neo-Marxist communist penetration is like, the part that really started frustrating me is I knew people in the permaculture world who we could have this conversation about it privately, but then publicly, they are marketing to that new age communist, like neo-Marxist, because that's where the majority of the market space
Where do you
is.
think that stuff comes from? As far as how did those ideas permeate into permaculture? Like you and I, Jesse and I kind of get together with a group of sort of libertarian guys every now and then. We kind of talk about ideas and stuff, and we've talked about it extensively and how it's penetrated academia.
Yeah.
And I think we would go down too much of a rabbit hole if we opened that up in this video. But where do you think it comes from in the permaculture scene? Because I have witnessed it, I'd say over the last 10 years, become more and more prevalent. Like when I first got into permaculture 10 years ago, I didn't see much of it then.
Right.
I still did, but it seems like over the last 5 and 6 years or something like that, that it's become more and more prevalent, where people who, when often I get a knee-jerk reaction if it's somebody I don't know and they say they're into permaculture, I'm going like, oh my God, you're probably a Marxist.
Right.
It's become so prevalent, and I know that that's not all people that are into permaculture.
Right.
Totally, because I don't want people to go, well, I'm not that way, because I'm sure that aren't.
Yeah.
But in my, like, I've done a lot of conferences and permaculture things like this that I've traveled around to, and it's like when I get talking to permaculture with people that are relatively new to it, they launch right into this fair share stuff.
Yeah.
Like, where does that come from?
Well, I think
Like-
it's a bit of a squeaky wheel thing. Partly is that it might not actually be the majority, because a lot of permaculture people are libertarians and they just want to head out to the bush and say F it, right?
Exactly.
And that's another part that kind of like that frustrated me. I think you got to kind of look. There's a bit of there's an anti-capitalist part to it.
Yeah.
I don't think you can unpack it unless you're willing to unpack or go down the road of why the neo-Marxist stuff is also kind of like intertwined with the environmentalist stuff.
Yeah, and that's a big conversation.
And that's a big conversation.
Yeah.
And I think the extension of that phenomena into permaculture is just a natural course of action.
That's an interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
I think that probably is the point source. So
well, it's sort of that self-hating Western thing,
Right.
where like because we're in the West and we live in sort of the absolute abundance of the world, we're the luckiest people on the planet as far as access to resources and capital and things
Right.
like that. Is that we have this self-hating thing about it
Right.
that stems from it comes from the environmentalist movement that's saying that we're all screwed. Right. Everything we do is destructive. And I mean, I even said this stuff myself. You go back to some of my earliest videos, I'm saying that, and I've changed my viewpoint on that. You and I have both kind of met in this place in the middle where we've gone, wait a second, we aren't destroying everything, and everything isn't all screwed, and it's not as bad as everybody makes us make it out to be.
Yeah, and I mean, and so because I wasn't willing to market to that, because I didn't feel that, because I started drifting. Even from the start. I mean, if I think back to like that conservation biology thing, where I was like, no, I want to be, and that's why Jeff Lawton captured me, because he was kind of like, one of his biggest catchphrases was like, imagine the most negative thing that we can be as people.
Yeah.
And then imagine the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
And it's not like
that's what I like about Jeff.
We could be either or. And he was really an advocate of, if we choose the permaculture principles and you design landscapes this way, we can be just as much positive as
That's right.
as we are potentially negative to a landscape.
Yeah.
Whereas this self-hating thing, it's like, and that's why it's, and so in my course we spend a lot of time talking about the invasive species concept, and how it's just a bunch. It's not actually a scientific concept. The concept of the invasive species. It's a political, ideological concept.
It's a philosophical
concept. It's not grounded in any kind of quantifiable, this is bad for the environment. The environment doesn't care.
Yeah.
People don't like these things pretty much because they don't like themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And it's that European self-hate thing.
Yes.
It's like, it's like the whether or not a species is going extinct somewhere. I mean, there's one species, one place that I used to teach where they had this plant that grows, and it's a problem there, but in its native region, it's going extinct.
Right.
So it's an invasive species in one spot, but where its origin from, they're actually losing it.
Yeah. Why is that?
Why is that not part of the discussion?
Yeah.
It's like this isolated thing. It's just like, oh, we take this holistic worldview until it's that one thing. That one thing right there is a problem, and we got to get rid of it because it hasn't been here from some arbitrary timeline. Like, how far back
That's right.
on the timeline do you want to go before you say, yeah, this is what's natural?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just an insane discussion.
Yeah.
It isn't grounded in any kind of rational. But the thing is the people who talk about it act as though they're being rational because we got science behind us. It's just like, no, it's irrational, and that's all you want people to do is admit that it's an irrational discussion, and most of the time we are being irrational.
Well, and it's funny with the whole conservation thing too, is, I mean, I hear this from conservation people who work in government that I know, who say things all the time like, oh, humans are an invasive species, you know?
Oh, here's the gun, go for it.
But it's
which
just
humans?
That's it, which humans. It's this self-hating thing where I'm just like, often I find people who say those things don't have kids too. Like they're sort of like self-hating liberals that will never have children and stuff, and they hate themselves for existing because they think that everything they do is destructive, and it's like, well, maybe everything you do is destructive, but you're an individual, and we can all act differently and choose our own paths.
Yeah. That's funny, the whole invasive species thing, like the cane toad in Australia. It's, it's supposed to be this calamity, and like these are such the thing about this is because they're irrational issues, they're triggering.
Yes.
Right? So we're trying, here we are. You can't actually talk about the cane toad and suggest that it might actually not be a problem.
Yeah.
Like, what do I know? Because it's this, people have a lot of emotion wrapped up in the cane toad.
Yeah.
Right? So we're at Jeff's farm, and Jeff's farm is amazing. At nighttime, it's this cacophony of sounds.
Yeah.
Right? And before he started there, it was this burnt out old patch of dairy farm.
Right.
No, like very little forest, if any, just dried out fire hazard, right? You know?
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's wet 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all by design, right? It's got nothing to do with rainfall or anything. And he tells stories about how people would come there. He's running his sprinklers full blast, and everybody else is out of water. Yeah. And they're going, "Oh, geez, Jeff, you're lucky."
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with luck.
Yeah.
I've
seen Jeff say this. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, so we're sitting around. So there's frogs and crickets everywhere, right? And all these native frogs all over the place, and cane toads. The cane toads are constantly blamed for wiping out the native frog population.
Right.
What's wiped out the native frog population is sugarcane. It's not the cane toads. They brought the cane toads in to deal with insects, but the native frogs were probably gone before the cane toads came. Yeah, the cane toads probably do eat a few native frogs, but if you go around Jeff's place, he's got all these old bathtubs with old scrap toilet floats. Okay. Right, automatic water is he's built all over the place. They're all gravity feed.
Oh, cool.
And they're all manky.
Yeah.
And they're all up off the ground.
Yeah. And
they are filled with native frog tadpoles. the cane toads can't get into them. That's native frog habitat, is these little isolated elevated ponds.
Oh, interesting.
The cane toads can't get into them, so they don't eat the native frog tadpoles.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
And like Jeff talks about this, you know, he putting a sprinkler on at night and all the native frogs come in, and like there'd be a cane toad sitting right in the sprinkler in the light, and a native frog will like hop in and hop away. And like you talk about 4 different species hopping by this cane toad, and the cane toad's supposed to be like wiping them out, right?
Right.
It's all about the context. The context is really important.
Yes.
And so we're sitting by the pond, and there's this big school of cane toad tadpoles like swimming by, and there's a bunch of young people sitting around there. We're talking. We start talking about this school of tadpoles, and one guy goes, "Oh, I should probably, you know, kill that. I should kill that school of cane toad tadpoles because they're so bad."
Yeah.
And Jeff hears this as he's walking by. He's just like, "Oh yeah, I got a pack of black people over. You want to kill them for me, please?" And it was nighttime, and the crickets were just coming on, and it's just like
Just drop the most politically incorrect bomb ever.
Just mic drop. It's just like, yeah, oh yeah, kill those. You want to kill these black people for me?
Oh my god.
And it's getting back to that thing. It's just like humans are an invasive species. Which humans?
Which humans? Exactly.
Which humans? And that's what and that's what Jeff and Bill were so good at. They were good at making these shocking, memorable statements.
Yes.
That had this depth of content.
I loved that about. I love
brought
that.
you back to the lessons they're teaching in class.
Yeah.
It's just like,
I
oh
know.
yeah, you forgot about that point in class?
I know.
Here's an ugly reminder.
I know. I love some of those lines. I remember hearing this one-liner from Jeff that it was when I first moved back to Kelowna, before I started my farm, but I got into the permaculture group there, and I had Jeff's, one of his DVDs. I think it might have been either Harvesting Water or his Food Forest one, and I showed it to our permaculture group. And Jeff had this one line in there. He talked about invasive species, comparing them to hardworking immigrants.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's so true.
Yeah.
It's like they come in and they do all the work that none of the locals want to do, but they do it and they break ground and then they make things easier for everybody else. But I remember when he said that in the DVD, like my class was just, they were like, what? You can't say that. But it was great because it was like, hey, that's like a real truth bomb that cuts through and makes a point really well. And like, it's funny because this is part of what I was talking about earlier, and just how like the permaculture scene has become so indoctrinated. Not that the scene has become indoctrinated, because they're all individual people, but
ideologically driven.
Yes, there's been a lot of people in the space who've become ideologically driven, and it's gone really politically correct. Yeah, like it's gone like it's gone, you know, with that whole social permaculture movement and stuff, and it's like the fair shares thing is now about just like diversity quotas. Yeah, and so they've taken these ideas of diversity in permaculture and then applied them to people. Right. To be like, oh, you need to have a diversity of people in this thing, and it's just. It's insanity, and that's kind of where a lot of my criticism of permaculture comes from, is just like how the ideological stuff has come through. I mean, I guess I want to circle back to like, to this day, I mean, you've had time away from it. Yeah. And like, what are some of the things that what are some of the things that you think are absurd in permaculture, excluding what we've already talked about? And what are some of the things that you think are still really cool and valid?
Well, I mean, probably the most absurd stuff is the stuff that we've talked about. Yeah. Like that I just don't have time for anybody who wants to impinge upon my choices without having the appropriate authority to do so. And this gets, the only people who have an authority to impinge on my activities are people who voluntarily reject being involved with me. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that voluntary, and a lot of that permaculture stuff is it's always about the other. Well, we got to get people to do this, and we got to get like.
It's a lack of skin in the game.
Yeah,
though,
they don't have any skin in the game, and it's just for me, like it was just untenable. I couldn't market to it. Yeah. I couldn't market to it because I need authenticity has always been integrity has always been really important to me, and I've had there's people who hired me back year after year teaching permaculture, and one of the reasons they're like, because they got a lot of choices.
Yeah.
And like I was dropping the ball with them a lot. Like they really had to chase me down.
Right.
And the reason why they wanted me back, they said the reason why is because they knew by the way I taught is that I had integrity, is that I would think about things, and I would only talk about things that I felt comfortable talking about.
Right.
And would only get behind things that I felt like a reasonable amount of certainty that this was something smart to get behind.
Right.
And so I could never ever get behind going down and we've talked about this before, marketing something that I felt inauthentic about.
Yeah.
So that's now when in terms of like stuff that I still like is the overall idea of looking at the way an ecology kind of functions, like taking a forest, like one of the archetypes that's used in a permaculture course is like the forest and all the layers of the forest and how, you know, it kind of all, I don't want to say works together because it's not like,
it's not that simple.
Well, it's not that simple. And the thing is it's not like working together. It's not cooperating.
No, it's heavily competitive, actually.
It's heavily competitive, and they're exploiting all these species. They're exploiting each other.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that one of my phrases one of my things that I would say is the species that places itself in most service to the whole is the one that will survive.
Yes.
And there's a whole line of evidence that I use to get to that point.
Yeah.
Right? Looking at the forest it's not necessarily, it's competitive, but it is not brutality that wins the game.
That's right. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's almost like capitalist in a way.
Totally.
Like this is where I would it's always criticized this sort of permaculture communists to be like, dude, permaculture is actually very capitalist.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like the more service you can provide to the whole. It's just like, well, that's capitalism in the sense that the more value you can provide to the most amount of people at the best price.
Yeah.
Is like the best way to win.
And that's the name of the game right now with the ability to generate content, right? Is like all like, you're a perfect example. All this free content you have out there, it's like you're giving all your best stuff away for free.
Yeah, right.
And there's this for the last couple of years I've been pruning in the wintertime while I'm kind of moved into this new phase where I'm working full time and I'm like kind of revisiting my entrepreneurial side and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I would prune vines in the winter because I'm good at it and I'm fast. And I listen to podcasts all day long. Yeah. 10 hours of education while I'm making money.
It's the best.
It's like, holy cow.
It's the best.
And there's this one guy, there's this group of guys that I listen to, and they're like direct response marketers. Dan Sullivan, Joe Polish, and I'm going to bring this back to what we're talking about, giving away stuff for free, because it's fucking, it's brilliant, and I'm so excited to fucking be a cog in that right now. I'm so excited to shill for these guys. I'm totally fucking shilling for these guys. And they don't even know it, and we've never even met each other. Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I've never ever met these guys.
Yeah.
I've had one interaction with one of their personal assistants. Right, I'm so far away. There's so many gatekeepers between these guys and myself, and here I am. I'm gonna pump these guys.
Right.
Dan Sullivan, Joe Polish, and Dean Jackson, and they got a bunch of different podcasts. One of them's called I Love Marketing, and that's Dean Jackson and Joe Polish. And if you're gonna start listening to that, start at episode 1. Otherwise, you'll just be
lost,
totally lost.
Yeah.
Just go back and listen to the first 30 episodes and listen to them again and again and again until it fucking clicks.
Yeah.
And you go, holy cow, these guys are brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. And then Dan Sullivan and Joe Polish, they do this 10x talks, and it's all about how to 10x your life. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things that Dan Sullivan says is, one of his lines is, capitalism is a larger and larger group of complete strangers cooperating with each other.
Right.
And one example he gives is like when he's away on vacation in Europe and he goes to an automatic teller with his bank card to get some cash, and you put it in and the machine very politely asks you which language you'd like to use. Right. And then you select, English. Right, you don't know what other languages it's asking because you can't read them.
You can't read them,
right? And it asks you, and then you punch in your numbers, and it goes, right? Out comes your money, and it says, thank you very much, have a nice day.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a whole network of complete strangers that never once shared a meal, said hi, had a conversation together, working together to make life better for each other.
Yeah.
So they're not even having this direct cooperative interaction.
Yeah.
They're just...
But they're all acting in their own self-interest.
They're all acting in their own self-interest.
But to the more benefit of others means that they can actually act more in their own self-interest by helping others. It's amazing.
It's brilliant. And like, it's just like, wow, like how, and really that's how a forest is operating from, and like even these are all, I bet you everything that's in this shot, other than those ponderosas, are invasives.
Right.
Because this is a human site, and humans create a certain habitat. Everywhere you go in the world, that's the one thing that's blown me away. All the places that I've gone in the world, like I went to the tropics, the desert, I grew up on the humid west coast of Canada. I've been up into the high prairies. Everywhere you go, there's like this group of plants, and they are all there. If there's people there, those plants are there.
Right.
Like there is an ecology following you around right now.
Yes.
It is as much dependent upon you as you on it. And the quicker you come, if you're going to be interested in permaculture, the quicker you come to recognize that and learn that, the better off you're going to be. So one thing I would always talk to students about is like a weed. Like I got a fucking serious weed problem out here.
Well, it's summer.
It's summer.
Typical on most farms.
It's out of control, and but the weeds, and I fight weeds now, and I fight them tooth and nail. And like I got 3 words for all you permaculturists out there that are getting frustrated with your gardens, and it's not working out the way it should, and it's not abundant. It's not the abundance that all of your teachers are telling you it is. It's not working out that way. I got 3 words for you: irrigation, weeding, and fertilizer. Those 3 words. Learn those things, understand them, and apply them. Well, and your gardens will do better. I promise you, because I struggled for years. But the thing is, they're good experiments. Try those permaculture gardens like you learn from them, right? Like one of the things I always taught my students is a weed earth care means that, like for me, is you give everything fair consideration before you bemoan it. So what that does is every problem you have with any animal, whether it's an invasive species or not, sit down and consider it before you do anything about it. Because in that consideration, you're going to learn a lot. Learn everything you can about it. So weeds become an opportunity for learning. And that's going to improve, because being a good farmer, whether you're a permaculturalist or not, and this is where the value of permaculture comes, is it forces us to look at patterns. Yes. So look at the patterns in a natural system, if there is such a thing. Try and understand that, and then look at the patterns of how your farm is running, and look at yourself not as something outside of that, but something that's in the middle of that. So in a forest, the moving parts of the forest are all the animals, all the insects, all the fur-bearing animals. They are the ones that move nutrients around, and you need that. And that's and that cycling. Like that's the biggest theme from an ecology that I think is probably the most beneficial concept. And I mean, that spins off in all kinds of directions.
That's right.
And then you get into like the technical details of implementation. Well, that's just a grab bag. Like any technique is appropriate. Yeah. But if you misplace it in the context of the pattern, the overall pattern, it's probably not going to work.
And I think that's where most people get lost in the weeds.
Totally.
With permaculture. Because I think, and you probably agree with this, the greatest contribution that permaculture has made to, let's call it sustainable agriculture, is the idea of looking at everything through a pattern lens.
Sure.
Looking at design through patterns and everything. And so I guess, it's funny because I see people in the comments who say things like, Curtis, why are you pulling your weeds? Leave your weeds. It's like stuff like that. It's kind of like, that's just insane. Yeah. Like you don't get production if your fields are fully full of weeds.
Right. Like it depends on what your goals are.
Sure. I guess if you don't want a big harvest,
if you don't,
and weeds are part of it, then leave the weeds.
Right.
But if your context is to sell a marketable crop and get a certain amount of yield, you can't have weeds. You got to pull those weeds.
Pull those weeds.
Oh man, that's funny.
But I mean, that's what it is. It's context driven.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where that a really honest, being honest. It's crazy, man. Well, I mean, Jordan the truth.
Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
Truth is the antidote.
Yeah.
You got to be honest with yourself about what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yes.
And that's the other part about the permaculture, the other side of the permaculture that I find immensely almost frightening. And there's a turn of phrase that I've used is the born again environmentalists.
Yes.
And their neo-feudalist agenda. Because that's what it is. Man, the number of fucking millionaires I ran into in the permaculture world that were all of a sudden going green, it is mind-blowing. I can't even imagine how these people look at themselves in the mirror. I cannot even fit my head around some of the discussions I've had. I've had a discussion with a multi-millionaire mining tycoon.
Yeah.
Silver, gold, that kind of stuff. Talk to me about stopping development on one of the islands I've lived on.
Right.
Well, I am a young person coming onto the island trying to make a life on the island, and he's basically saying, well, we don't want you here because we want to protect the environment. And you're kind of going, what?
Yeah, get off your high horse.
You've made millions mining silver the world over.
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah.
Can
and
you
now you're self-righteous.
Break?
Yeah, now you're an angel.
And this idea that what we're going to do is that all the land is going to be common and people are going to steward it, this neo-feudalist kind of approach to the proprietary system, and it's just wow, no, I'm not in on that. Or the people I've met who have gone and made a whole bunch of money in the oil industry, the tradespeople, that now are holding up and they've bought their little piece, and that's where kind of it's here I am, I've lived this eco-virtuous life. Really, man, when we started, I was bicycle commuting 30 kilometers every day. We were living light. Our footprint was small. There was a time, this is that guy in Britain who's the free economy, right? Remember all that rage?
Are we talking about Rob Hopkins?
I don't know if it's
Rob
Rob
Hopkins.
Transition Town. Not Transition Town.
No, not Rob. Okay.
But there was some guy who was doing this whole free thing, no money.
Right, the guy who is living like a peasant, an agrarian peasant,
basically.
an
agrarian peasant, and we're all just going to do things for each other for free, and it's fine. And
it's the rich people would love that. The people in control would love that. You guys can all live like peasants, and we'll live in our castles.
When I started in permaculture, our cash requirements on a monthly basis were $287.
Wow, that's
a month.
Cheap.
Do you know what it was for? Take a guess. What was I having to pay? I had to pay it. $287 a month.
I don't know.
Everything else.
Food?
Nope. Because we were living on an apple orchard as woofers.
Okay.
We had all our food provided for us and our housing.
Gas?
We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have a vehicle. Student loan. Student loan. And I paid the whole thing off. All of it. Every last penny. I didn't declare bankruptcy on it. I paid for it.
Yeah.
When I was at University of Victoria, I basically bombed out of the University of Calgary. I was drinking too much, smoking too much pot, just putting myself into a depression. When I left the University of Calgary, I was going to the guidance counselors and asking for, I was so far behind on all my assignments that I had to get special notes because I was, I put the full force of the safety net of the university to my benefit so that I didn't totally fail out.
Yeah.
And then I had to write special letters to the University of Victoria to let me in. And because my grades were so bad. And I went to the University of Victoria and I took a minimum full course load, 3 courses. I was working as a prep cook 30 hours a week, and then I started training sprint canoe racing with some national team members out there, and we were doing 2-a-days 6 days a week. So what that means is we were paddling for 3 hours in the morning, 2.5, 3 hours in the morning. Then I go to school, and then in the evenings we do 3 hours of weightlifting. Right?
Just running yourself ragged.
Yeah, I always do better when I've got lots of stuff to do.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I was doing that, and then I was working my job, right? And then we still had time to go out and get drunk. Friday night, we go out and we blow our minds out, and then Saturday morning we go to do a workout.
Yeah.
Right?
But not when you have a kid.
Not when you have a kid. You can't do that when you have a kid.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that's what I was doing, and like I started taking just enough student loan to cover my tuition.
Yeah.
Right? And I was paying for everything else, and I was getting drunk and having a good and doing, I wasn't an A student. You couldn't be an A student. I couldn't be an A student under that schedule, but I was a solid B plus student under that schedule. And I remember walking across campus one day, and there was two tables by the student union right beside each other. One was keep tuition costs low, and the other one, they're selling tickets, $40 a piece, to their homecoming smash up at the student union building. And I'm looking at this going,
the irony,
man, we're retards.
Yeah.
Like, this is so stupid. Oh, the poor students, blah blah blah. It's just and it was just so stupid.
Oh man.
So I paid off my student loan, but that was the only cost we had. Like, to get back to my original point, like we like Tanya and I have been eco-virtuous. Like when we went to Jordan, that was all on our own dollar.
Yeah.
We go and make money, and we go and spend it all to go and plant trees in the desert, right, and contract hepatitis A.
Oh jeez.
It's kind of like, I've never been one to like toot my own horn too much, but like, we got street cred when it comes to all this stuff.
Yeah.
And
you put a lot of time in. You've done a lot of projects.
I just got sick of like all these people who have gone and made a whole bunch of money off the oil industry or mining or whatever, and now they're gonna, and like, I'm putting myself at this competitive disadvantage. Everybody else was sacrificing their virtue to slice off their own little piece of pie. So I was like, well, F it. So I started moving down the road of like looking more at production agriculture, got more involved in the organic movement. That's a little less permeated by the neo-Marxist stuff, but it's definitely there.
It's getting there too.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
And so here we are. I mean, I'm a organic farmer, and and that's it's not permaculture. Being a successful organic farmer is not the same as being a good permaculture teacher.
No.
Not even close.
Yeah.
There's those things are two entirely different beasts.
Agriculture is a man-made creation.
Yeah. And I'm always thinking from that permaculture lens.
Yeah.
And always trying to move towards that. I want more animals here. In all of my fallow areas that are weeds, if I had a flock of egg layers, those weeds wouldn't be there.
Those egg layers are work though.
They are.
They don't take a day off.
No, they don't take a day
7 days a week.
They are 7 days.
You got to move them.
So it takes people. It takes you got to have people to do it. And this is where, there's a relationship I have with Bonnie. We sign a lease. Here. Yeah, the landowner here. This land that I'm leasing. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. It's 700 square feet.
With your wife and daughter.
I sleep there.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
We got it for so cheap.
Yeah.
$110,000.
That is cheap.
I never have to worry. It's the cheapest housing I've ever had.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, even when I was renting basement suites, we never had cost of living less than that.
It's probably worth double that now.
No.
No?
No. Have you been to OK Falls?
No, I haven't. No, it hasn't. It hasn't seen the same boom.
You don't want to come.
Yeah, okay.
Don't come to OK Falls.
Yeah.
But anyway, we just lived down the road like 10 minutes, and Bonnie and I, we're 3 years into this, and this is constant. And one of Joe Salatin's famous lines is, a lease agreement is as good as the paper that's written on it, right? It's the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Bonnie and I have a relationship. For the last couple of years, we've shared 2 pigs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This year I didn't. The only thing I've contributed to the pigs is a little bit of advice on setting up electric fences and like how to set the system up, because I've just been too busy to deal with them. And then I help with the kill.
Yeah.
I do all the evisceration and all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, there's a bit of skill involved in that, but it's not the lion's share of the work. And then Bonnie's been taking care of the feed. And I know that I like to move more towards animals, and Bonnie likes having them, but it takes bringing more people into the fold. We've got a few ideas about how we might do that.
Yeah.
And this is social permaculture in a nutshell. And it doesn't involve us holding hands
Yeah, running through the flower field.
And all agreeing to a certain lifestyle set or anything like that. We like everybody involved in this. We all have very different lifestyles. We're at different phases in our life. And that's probably what makes it work. And one of the, just as a really astute observation that Jeff's made, because he's obviously been and seen a lot of different eco-villages. Says you go to these eco-villages and they always seem to have trouble. And the reason why is because everybody in them is exactly the same. And one of the principles that Jeff teaches from is that any energy in excess in a system will turn it into chaos. You got too much of any one type of energy, it has nowhere to go productively, so it's going to cause problems.
Yeah.
And so you get into these eco-villages and everybody is the same, and there's it's like having 6 carpenters around to build one garden shed. Could you imagine?
Right.
6 red steel carpenters and one garden shed.
Right.
And all of them are going to have a little bit of a different opinion. Oh, I wouldn't do it that way, I'd do it this way, because they all got their own little trick.
In the kitchen.
Yeah. 1 red steel carpenter, 4 people don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, perfect.
That red steel carpenter telling them what to do.
Yeah.
One of them likes scraping paint, one of them likes painting, one of them likes running a hammer, one of them, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's interested in doing different things. So you got to have a diverse, and that's where diversity of demographics comes in. I just had an idea. We're not going to go there with that.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the way we're managing our labor market right now. But when you know, is like, well, it's funny. Hey, here's a good example. Is insects. If you look at an insect life cycle, and this is permaculture thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we're going to look at like the insect, and this is the way I always teach my permaculture courses. I'll take something. Let's look at an insect lifestyle, or not a lifestyle, but a life cycle of an insect, which is a great thing to learn because insects are a big problem. So learn how the basic pattern of an insect life cycle works: egg, larva, pupa, adult phase, right? And the larva and the adult phase, like, unrecognizably, like you wouldn't recognize them as being the same, like a caterpillar and a butterfly.
Yeah.
Those are the same species.
Mm-hmm.
Do the caterpillar and the butterfly use the same resource base?
Not really.
No, not at all. Evolutionary speaking, you could not come up with a better way of organizing a life cycle, because the adult phase is not competing with the juvenile phase for any resources.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Like, that is brilliant. Like, why would you, and if you look at all of, like, that's like that's sexual differences, right? The female half of the species, like, even though there's like a broad group of nutrients that the whole species needs, there's specific micronutrients that are more important for one half of the species than the other.
Yeah.
So when you go into desert environments, you can have sex balances that are skewed, like, in some cases, depending on the species, this is according to Bill, this is a Bill story, it can be as high as 16 to 1 males or females to males. 16 to 1 females to males, because in dry land conditions with the alkaline soils, minerals aren't as available, and you have certain deficiencies, particularly in zinc, and that's the male micronutrient, zinc, that make it more difficult for males to survive. They're a less successful reproductive strategy.
Wow, very interesting.
That's a really important bit of information.
It is.
Yeah,
it's
hugely important. And so then you look at dietary differences, right? Where you have like bone marrow is set aside for the female half, right? And men are eating testicles and eyeballs. There's iron concentrated in the bone marrow, and there's zinc in eyeballs and testicles because of those nutrient deficiencies, these culturally embedded.
So this all circles. This is what I love about permaculture, is looking at these things that exist in ecology, and noticing patterns, and then looking at those patterns in a more macro perspective, whether they be in human societies,
right,
or farms, or what have you. And it's interesting with the sort of the eco-village thing, is like, one thing I've noticed, I've visited a number of eco-villages, and
There's chaos in those places.
There's a lot of chaos.
They try to hide. They try to hide it.
Honestly, you know, the ones that I find are the best though are the religious ones.
Right.
The Christian ones.
Yeah.
But so that does that contradict Jeff's sort of hypothesis there?
So I bet you. So you might need to look and do an analysis. And you might find that they're demographically stratified as well.
Well, one thing I find that's interesting in Christian societies is that they don't shy away from the hierarchy. They sort of embrace a hierarchy, which is interesting. I've noticed in eco-villages is they pretend to reject the hierarchy, but the hierarchy's always there.
Oh, yeah.
There's usually a matriarch.
Right.
That pretty much like everybody wants to pretend that it's all egalitarian, but there's usually like a person who is the sort of unspoken grand leader.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's where it's sketchy. Whereas maybe in sort of the Christian eco-villages, it's dishonest. Is the Christian eco-villages that I've seen are more just like, yeah, this person is the leader, and that's how it works.
It's a lot of work covering up a lie, and it takes a lot of energy.
That's where the whole truth is the antidote thing comes in. Wow.
I mean, that's like it's something like, and like this is kind of like we're kind of shooting from the hip. I mean, I'm not an expert in eco-villages, but I've been to enough of them to know they're not a place I want to live.
God, no. I wanted to live in an eco-village before I visited a bunch of eco-villages.
Totally.
Then after that, I was like, yeah, I think I'm happy living where I am.
Before I came across the permaculture thing, like I did a bunch of campaigning for the Green Party, and the local leader of the Green Party, the local candidate of the Green Party where I was living, was a member of an eco-village, and he's just like, yeah, we're full, but they're starting a new one up in Yarrow. And I sent emails to Yarrow, several emails, and lucky for me, they didn't have their act together enough because they never got back to me. Because I may have actually
been roped
ensnared in the web, right?
Into the web of hysteria.
Yeah,
oh,
right. And,
wow.
And this was before I came across the permaculture, and before, like, I'm so lucky that Jeff Lawton was my first permaculture teacher.
Yeah,
because it could have been anybody.
Right, and you might have been indoctrinated into some line of thinking that who knows? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And it's just like Carl Jung is like ideas have people. People don't have ideas.
Yes. Well, and isn't that the truth today?
Oh.
I mean, maybe it's always been, but I mean,
for sure, it's always been.
It's unbelievable with all this Marxist ideology that's penetrated society and social justice and all that. That it is literally ideas have you.
Yeah.
You're captured by an idea like a virus, and it's permeated your mind.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful insight.
It is such a beautiful insight.
Powerful.
It's so powerful if you see that.
What a good piece of self-reflection.
Absolutely.
I do it every day.
You and I have both been victims of it.
Sure.
I have been absolutely possessed by ideology.
And we're possessed by one right now.
Perhaps, yeah. But once you learn to look at things objectively, you can become aware of where ideas are capturing you.
Sure.
And you go, okay, wait a second, maybe I have too much confirmation bias in this one one particular area.
Hopefully.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, okay. So we've been going for a while. This is we should do this again. I mean, you guys leave your questions and comments below if you want to see us go on. What's that?
Well, we can answer questions. We can address.
We could do another thing like that.
Yeah.
Permaculture questions with Jesse Lemieux. Maybe that'll be another topic for a video. But I mean, we've gone really down a rabbit hole with philosophy. We talked about ecology, design principles, a bit of economics. Like this has been a really really fruitful conversation.
Sure. I mean, and the thing about it is, I mean, we're two guys heading into our 40s. We got families started.
Yeah.
We've seen hopefully enough of the world, to kind of hopefully do better with. I hope to you break your life into thirds, right? You can break it into thirds.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm looking forward to the next 30 years.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I would hope, like, if it could go back into my 20s, like, I guess I could kind of hope that at this point, moving into my 40s, that I'd be able to, like, sit down and actually have a conversation like this.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely.
To be able to, like, talk about farming but then move it into these broader contexts of how we can be better people.
Well, there's a saying that's like, you can't teach farming. What is it? How does it go? It's like you can't teach farming in a classroom, but you can teach philosophy on the farm, because you're like you're talking about, like listening to 10 hours of podcasts when you're pruning vines. It's like farming's is an incredible opportunity to have a perspective on the world. And I think even for me, I must say, I mean, maybe this is in the conclusion of this whole conversation, is that the greatest thing that I pulled from permaculture that I still hold today is looking at things through the lens of pattern.
Yeah.
Because since I've had that, no matter what enterprise I'm involved in, because I do many different things, I have different types of businesses and all this, and it's just like looking at that through patterns is just it's an amazing view to see the world through.
Right.
And especially with farming, it's like you see these patterns and you can learn to use them to your benefit or react to them, or maybe have something that's more of a proactive solution or whatever it is.
Yeah.
No,
you're right. You're totally, I totally agree with you about that. Absolutely. That pattern part, you know, if anybody out there who's interested in permaculture or looking at it, I mean, one of the things I recommend is spend the $100, I don't know what it's worth now. It's probably $125 to get a permaculture manual to your door. Maybe you can find a used one for cheaper than that.
Yeah.
It's worth the investment. And it's the first 4 chapters of that designer's manual. That's permaculture. All the other stuff is anchored by those first 4 chapters, and it kind of builds through. It's kind of like the first 3 chapters are kind of like, or the first 2 chapters are like, why bother looking, why should we bother, why should we be concerned about these things? The 3rd chapter is like, okay, so what if we could make the world better? What does that look like? That's chapter 3.
Yeah.
Right. And then chapter 4 is kind of like, and this is the best tool we can use to help us sort it out. And that's the chapter on pattern. And then once you get that, that's such an important chapter, that pattern. Once you have that pattern, then it's like you can just relate, everything flows, right? Because it's all about flow and dealing with pattern.
Yeah.
And that applies to business, cash flow, right? Like it's everything. Like there's patterns to everything, and everything kind of everything gathers.
Yeah.
It goes through this point of intensity, right? Yeah. And then it comes out the other side in this, and it goes from diverse to narrow to diverse. Yeah. And I mean, we were just talking about that, and you were talking about where you are in your life now. Yeah. And it's like making lifestyles, and it's cruisy. Yeah. And I'm at this point where I'm running nonstop. And I was just like, it's just like going through the sound barrier.
I wonder.
And it's just like going. It's like a river squeezing through that point. And you know,
hypervelocity
and remember in Canmore when there was that big flood on Cougar Creek, and it wiped that subdivision off the side of the road?
Yeah.
Okay, that subdivision was built right at that point in that whole water catchment.
Those were design thinking just
just on the other side of it.
They weren't thinking
but
about
close enough
the
to
bigger
that
picture. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like you just and you can look at the whole, you can literally look at the whole world that way. And that is Bill Mollison's gift. His synthesis of the world through that lens, that is the gift that he bequeathed to us. It's amazing.
I don't want to open a can of worms here, but I want to drop this, and maybe some of the people listening will check this out or weigh in on what their thoughts are. I wonder if there could be a new school, because I know you're a fan of Nassim Taleb, or have you read Anti-Fragile?
No.
You haven't?
No.
Okay, I in our discussions when we get together with a group of guys, we sometimes talk about Taleb. But I wonder if there is going to be a new school form of thinking relating ecology and pattern, all this stuff, with anti-fragile thinking, and Taleb's
holistic management.
Is that holistic? Because Taleb's whole hypothesis is that you have fragility, resilience, and anti-fragility, and I love that as a lens. So for me, what's been so influential in my thinking, and I think has been a big contributor to where I've gone in the world, is like understanding pattern thinking rooted in Bill Mollison's original philosophy, and then I've taken that through Nassim Taleb's work with anti-fragile and understanding anti-fragility, and how do those come together. It's an exciting form of philosophy.
Check out Alan Savory's stuff.
I have.
Yeah, have you read this?
I haven't read his book, no.
Yeah.
I've watched a bunch of his videos.
Yeah, and you don't need to read the whole, but like the first chapters where he lays out his philosophy.
Yeah. Okay.
It kind of, it's like this spoken word is great stuff, but then books are never going away.
That's right. Yeah.
You gotta, if you want to really get into something, I've just started reading how to influence friends.
How to win friends and influence people by greatest book ever written.
Yeah. Well, I just tell you the other day when I called, I went and bought the book brand new. It's been in print for 75 years, and I paid $24 for it.
Yeah.
And
what a download of information for such a cheap price, hey?
But the thing that's amazing about a book like that, like what book, 75 years old, is anybody gonna pay, like a reprint?
Yeah.
Right? For $24. Like that is a testament to that book, in my opinion. It's just like, yeah, I'll pay $24 for this. And because it's been recommended by you, a couple other people have recommended it to me. And the way, and I love that book at the beginning, how he's like, use this book this way.
Yeah.
Read it once, read it a second time, scratch it up.
I think I should read it again. I've read it 2 or 3 times already.
Yeah.
I was riding my bike downtown the other day with my wife and daughter, and I saw a young girl, probably 16 years old, reading that book in the park.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and I was like,
look out for
wow,
her.
watch out for her.
Holy cow.
crap.
My goodness.
That's all. I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy crap, she's reading Dale Carnegie.
What's she on about?
Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. It was just,
wow.
I was inspired when I saw it. Anyways, so we're going to leave it there. Yes. Okay, guys, thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll be back. Always a pleasure.
That was awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.